My name is Charles Morrison. I'm a project finance project partner at DLA Piper, based in the London office, but I spend a great deal of my time working on projects in Africa. I'm also called to the Tanzanian bar, where I spend a fair bit of time working. And if I say that I've been working presently for the lenders on the IPTL power project in Tanzania since 1999, I'm probably the last person to be talking about mistakes in projects and how to get them developed quickly. But I can give some perspective, I hope, which comes from, as I say, many years, 20 years plus working on projects in Africa and elsewhere in the world. I think the starting tip is that if you have as your basic principle aiming at a project that everyone involved in it can be proud of, you won't go far wrong. So if you think about it from the perspective of the utility or the government, that the utility can stand up and feel it's a PPA to be proud of, not one where they have accepted a range of points that they really ought not to have and are embarrassed about, that the government could stand up and defend in its parliament, that the lenders will feel content with, and that you feel that you've had as a developer a reasonable equity return built in, you won't be going far wrong. The other tip I'd give from the start is, and I heard this coming out from a number of the contributions over lunch, having an experienced team, the right team, that can just help in so many different ways. So much of the time that's wasted and the cost that's built up is as a result of not having the right experience on the teams. And I thought that one of the contributors made a very important point, that governments need to have that expertise as well on their side, and there are, as was pointed out, a number of funds that will pay for that expertise, or the project itself can pay for that expertise and the cost can just fall into the model and is de minimis over the length of a project, but can actually help get the project done. So what's the overarching point there? It's understanding the legitimate interests of the players in the project. If you can start from that standpoint too, understanding what is the legitimate interest of a host government. What's the legitimate interest here of the banks looking to lend? And then what are the legitimate interests of me as equity if I'm developing it? If you can have a clear idea of those points, then again, you won't go far wrong in developing your project, and you'll avoid a number of the mistakes that are commonly made. So a few tips then in my 5-minute contribution. If you're the developer, start off with solid shareholder arrangements, get your shareholder arrangements documented properly in a solid shareholder agreement that addresses governance and the roles of the parties and a clear dividend policy. Having a clear view on your model from the beginning, the right advice on your model, knowing what your model's going to do, the right debt equity split, and knowing, again, thinking about your interests, the legitimate interests of lenders on the debt. Just think about how you're going to position your negotiations, and each side will have different views there, but that's something to get straight from the beginning. Then moving on to the project documents, concession, ask yourself, do you need a concession? Is that actually needed for your project to develop it? What other form of document would suffice, or rights do you need? But if you do end up with a concession, then making sure that that's properly negotiated, of course. Look at the governing law on the forum. A point was made about arbitration and the importance of that. Just think about the balance of the availability of arbitration, because it can be fiercely expensive. You think project finance lawyers are expensive, just wait till you deal with arbitration lawyers and litigation lawyers. And just think about who has the right position in any arbitration, because given the cost, given the delay, governments are often emasculated when they agree to a foreign arbitration. Do you want to try and have an arbitration with a seat in Johannesburg or Nairobi or somewhere rather than London? Think about whose interests you're working to there, but very, very important point.
Charles, maybe we need to leave also the other lawyers to have walking down through the list of documents. We'll come back on you. I think you mentioned a couple of interesting points. Maybe if we just let Kieran just...
Very happy to. Thank you.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.